This is Motorsport Radio. 1, 2. Join the conversation. Contact the show on Twitter, on Facebook, and on our website, Motorsport Radio.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Motorsport Radio show, Motorsport Talks. And of course, this one is very, very special because not only do we have the lovely Mike Seabourne, who I'm going to interview and probably scare away, but we have Nick Connor from the Formula One show, which is very special indeed. And as well, we've got Andy Lloyd joining us on the panel. But let's invite our guest by giving him the usual treatment from Motorsport Radio. And I'll start off with Mike. Why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners?
So, hi, I'm Mike Seabourne. I'm a club racer. I race in the classic touring car racing club Jaguar Challenge, which is a sort of slightly balmy series for Jaguars of all ages. And I've been doing that for about 3 years now.
Yeah, and you say Jags of all ages, but it's not the Jags that you'd expect to race, is it? Like the XK120s and the XKSSs. It's what Jags are racing?
So this is there are historic and classic series for the cars that are actually worth something. This series is more for the cars that aren't. And it was sort of born out of the times when you could pick up an XJS from a scrapyard for 500 quid and take it racing very easily. And at the time, that made for a very competent race car. And over the years, it's evolved to the point now where we've got supercharged 500 to 600 horsepower machines, and it's all a bit mad, really.
Yes. What car are you driving for this season then?
So I've changed car over the off season. Most of the images flashing over the screen now are of my lovely old XJ40. Which I actually was the championship winner with last year. And that car was terrific. It was notorious within the series for having been in several sets of hands, all of whom drove it about 150%, quite often into things. It had been on its roof at least 2 or 3 times. It was, a really well-known car. And I was very lucky to be its custodian and take it to a championship win last year. But I wanted to move up the grid slightly, so I've changed into an XJS for this year coming, which I bought one that had been crashed because, why would you bother to buy something that's not going to give you a load of grief, when you can have an absolute pain in the bum for a while. And I've been screwing that together in my shed over the off season.
So XJS, I'm guessing 4-litre V8, not the 6-litre V12.
Not the 6-litre V12. I would love a V12, but they are a nightmare to keep going. From what I've seen from the other guys, that they can make terrific power. That they can be turned into a 500 plus horsepower car, but they will go wrong all the time from what I've seen for the rest of the grid. So mine's a 4-litre. It's a straight 6, 4-litre AJ16 straight 6, which should be good for in the region of 300 horsepower.
More than enough on the wet Donington track then.
More than enough for the dry when the suspension's 40 years old.
Yeah, so obviously this is not what people would obviously expect as a racing series, as a way of starting. So why don't you tell the listeners, how did you start into motorsport and what was your path to get to racing beat up old Jags at 100 mile an hour?
So I started karting when I was a kid. I was fascinated by cars and wanted to be a racing driver, as most kids do. So I had a go at karting and I found that I was actually reasonably good at it. I won a few rental karting championships. Never had the money to go any further as a kid, so I had to sort of leave it be. Went away, found myself work, and then found myself with enough money in my back pocket to contemplate going racing. And would you believe it was actually budget that sent me the way of the Jaguars, because my old XJ40 that I won the championship in cost me £3,000. And this XJS, granted a little bit bent out of shape, but it cost me £4,000. That's why I ended up with Jaguars. I didn't want to go and race some absolute Titanic-looking behemoth around Brands Hatch, but it was the fastest, hilarious, most mental, cheap race car that I could find, which is what put me in this series.
Fair enough. And what would you say has been your biggest achievement to date? So, like, from all your racing series that you raced in, what would you say is your biggest, the one you look back on now and go, I'm proud I did that?
Well, I should probably say winning the title last year, but we had a bit of a depleted series. The thing you come to learn about club racing is that it's absolutely embroiled in politics. It's like Gossip Girl. It's ridiculous. And so our series was surrounded by politics last year, and it led to us not having grids the sizes that we should have done. So I did win the championship, but it didn't come easily. It never does. But it wouldn't be my proudest achievement. Quite frankly, putting the XJS together has really tested my mettle. I actually got it finished to the state that I could take it out on track last week, and I put it away without needing to do anything else on it that evening. And I finished work, went home, and went straight into the garage. And I was like, oh, hang on. Oh, I don't need to do this anymore, because that had been my routine for weeks. It had been finish work, get in the garage, get the hammers out. It's really tested my mettle getting that car together, and it's not done yet, but it's looking like it's really getting there now.
Okay, and obviously that being your greatest achievement, when do you look to go out and test to see if what you've done is worthwhile?
Well, I think so. I don't want to get ahead of myself now, because I could definitely set myself up to fail. But this XJS actually isn't one of the most modified cars on the grids. I won from a fairly low class in the saloon because it's well out of date in terms of its equipment, and it's not militarized in the way that some of the grid was. And this XJS is much the same. So I'm racing in the same class as I was last year, but with a car that's about 200 kilos lighter, and I think probably makes about 20 or 30 more horsepower. So in theory, as long as I screwed it together properly, it should bring a title again. But, I could set myself up to fail there.
Okay, so you say about different classes. Are you able to talk sort of our listeners through the class system a little bit to help them understand a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Jaguar Challenge, or the JEC Saloons and GTs series as it was, as I say, we've had a bit of a political situation, and we've changed organising club over the off-season, but the series is the same in spirit. It's got 4 classes, and they range from A through to D. Class A is for cars that you pretty much drag, I was going to say off the road, but most of our cars, it's out of a scrapyard or out of a field, wherever they've been sat for the last 20 years. You put a roll cage in them and the mandatory safety equipment, and you take them racing, and that makes for genuinely cheap racing. You can pick up these old Jags for 1,500 quid for a really good one. And then that runs through to Class D, which is where the monsters hide. Class D is, I think the Jaguar Racing Class D is one of the most incredible, entertaining series or classes in club racing, because that's for exclusively supercharged cars, V12s or straight sixes. But once you've got a straight six in Class D, you can do pretty much anything, and that they tend to be 400 horsepower, flame spitting, incredible bits of kit. It's that's where the monsters hide, Class D.
Yeah, I must say, I watched a few races last year, and I was just amazed, especially by the XJRs they had there. I was thinking, well, who in their right mind would go racing with an XJR? Like, it weighs about 2.5 tons, but yeah, it was an amazing series. It was brilliant. So I advise you to go watch that. Who would you say is your main inspiration to go racing?
Well, would you believe, growing up, I didn't really have one. I always followed motorsport, but I didn't have a particular driver I thought, I want to be like him. It wouldn't have been until the likes of Jack Goff and Ash Sutton turned up in British touring cars that I really found myself looking at someone's style and thinking, yeah, that's a bit of me. Ash Sutton in particular, I could watch Ash drive all day and all night. He is absolutely inspirational, and the way most people would call it foolish, but the way that he can be in a completely safe position since he's been fighting for championships. He can be somewhere absolutely safe where he just needs to bring the car home, and the likes of Colin Turkington would just bring the car home. And Ash is still looking at that guy ahead, thinking, "Yeah, but I can have him. I'm gonna give it a go."
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Ash Sutton does make you really want to watch touring cars, and it makes you want to shout at the TV as well. It's like, stay there, don't do anything, don't do that. Oh God, he's done it. It's that sort of thing. So what advice would you give to someone? Say someone's listening at home and is sitting there thinking, you know what, I'd love to do that. I've got a XJ6 in my garage that I've been wanting to do up, like a little project. But you know what, I want to take it racing. So what advice would you give to someone who, say, wanted to take it racing in your championship?
In our championship, it's quite simple. You just got to give the lads a shout. Just look on the Facebook page, go through the Classic Touring Car Racing Club, give us a shout. We'll probably put you off, but if we don't, we'll invite you in. And that's the thing I didn't do when I started, was I didn't dip my toes into the different clubs and actually see the series. I didn't go out and watch that much club racing because it's all a bit hidden from the outside. It all exists in this sort of slightly foggy wilderness where it's difficult to make out what's what. If you just take the plunge, you just go, you know, there's 750 MC on my circuit this weekend, MSVR, BARC, BRSCC, go down and see what's on, get in the paddock, talk to the racers. And that sort of eliminates the fog, this sort of, what do I do to get started? It can all be a bit mysterious, and you just need to go and find out what the crack is, and the racers, all down to earth, they will talk you through it.
Yeah, definitely. And so how can people at home watch this championship? Like, go down, so like what circuits are you racing at and all this sort of stuff?
So obviously the ideal thing to do would be to go to the circuits. That's it's I think it's £10 for a ticket, and that'll get you into the Classic Touring Car Racing Club. But not just that, we're on the support bill for the British Truck Racing Championship. We're on the support bill for Britcar, and so you get, we've got 5 incredible categories just as in terms of the Classic Touring Car Racing Club, including for this year the Super Tourers, which, I mean, who doesn't want to watch that? That's going to be incredible. But then the series that we race with, Britcar, British Truck Racing, these are unmissable, and it's a tenner. It's a tenner, and you get a day's racing. But if you've got a valid reason, like you've got 2 broken legs and you can't make it down to the circuit, only under those circumstances is it forgivable. We're really lucky to have a live streamed, live stream footage every event this year. So you can look it up on the BARC YouTube channel, and the quality of the coverage is cracking, really, really good. And Dave Goddard, who does our commentary, is a real genius. His attention to detail, his anecdotes absolutely bring the racing alive. So that's the way to follow it if you can't make it to the circuit.
Mike, I've got a question that I've always been interested in club racing. On this show, we typically talk about racing where teams bring a transporter and 6 guys in matching overalls jump out and fettle the car and put it out on the track, and the driver strolls up, jumps in and races. But that's not what club racing is about. When you go racing, what's your support network? Who do you bring along to support you and help you run the car over the course of a race weekend?
Well, I'm really fortunate. I've got a mechanic, I've got a driver coach, and I've got a fan club. Unfortunately, they're all my missus. She's she is my support network. She's brilliant. I do it all off my own back. It's blood, sweat, tears, snot, earwax, a lot to get the car out. And if there was a bit more money, then maybe you could run with a team. But I'm under no illusions that I'm going to be able to do this forever. So in order to make it last, you've got to do the work yourself, because paying a team to run every year is incredibly expensive. It's just not feasible for most of us, you know. But I'm sure that's what we choose. I'd love to just be able to get in the car and say, "Excuse me, mate, it understeers, sort it out." You know, that's the dream.
So you turn up with your car on a trailer. You put your awning up in the paddock, and that's your base for the weekend. Is that how it works for you?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm doing it a bit differently to most in that when I first started as a youth, I don't automatically have my trailer license, but I did have my HGV Category C through work. So I went out and bought an 18-ton lorry, which, you know, people see you turn up in it and they think that you are some established outfit, and then I jump out with the missus and we start throwing ratchet straps around, and people soon realise that actually no, it's just the easiest way for me to do it.
Between race weekends, if the car comes back in any way damaged, it's up to you to put it in the garage and sort it out, is it?
It is, yeah. And actually this year is the first year that I will have a garage. Previously, the only facilities I had was my 18-ton truck. So the car, yeah, that was storage for the car as well. It sits in a yard, and the race car would just sit in there, and that's how I stored it, because I didn't have any space or anything. So yeah, I used to do all my spanner work in the back of the truck, which isn't easy, and it's why the XJ40 always looked a bit battle scarred, because I never really had the facilities to properly get it together. But the XJS now is in the garage. I've actually got a garage. I've managed to get that sorted. So yeah, this is the first time that I've got some proper space to work in now.
And although you're fettling the car yourself, the car still has to go through quite strict scrutineering at each race weekend, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's, again, this is why I say to anyone who wanted to start racing to get involved with the clubs and to speak to the guys who are already doing it, because the MSV Blue Book to get a car eligible is about that thick when it's printed, and it's really daunting. But when you get your head into it and you find what the car, it's all about knowing what the scrutineer is going to look for when he sees the car, and there's very specific points on it that it needs to be that are critical in terms of its eligibility. And so if you talk to the guys who built the cars previously, or most importantly, or most easily, is to buy a car that's been campaigned before, because then you know that the basics will be right. If it's been raced for a long time, you'll probably find millions of bodges that you've got to undo, or at least that's my experience. But yeah, if it's previously been built, it makes things a lot easier. But once you know which bases you've got to cover, it's a lot more easy to understand where the scrutineer is going to go and look on the car, because going into it blind it would be daunting. There's a lot of eligibility criteria going into it, but you can break it down and make it easier for yourself.
Okay. Thanks very much. We don't spend enough time talking about club racing, and the racing can be fantastic, as you've already alluded to in those series, yet it probably doesn't get the spotlight that it deserves. So hopefully we can shed a little bit of light on it.
So just one final question. Obviously, looking through the photos, they all look like properly race-prepared cars. But what bits on them are sort of like? Do they have road tyres, road brakes, road gearbox, road suspension, or do they have specific parts from specific companies that you've got to fit?
Yeah, this is where which series you run in and which class system you run in can make all the difference, because what you tend to find with club racing is that if the regulations are free, someone is going to walk in with a wallet the size of my head and do what they want with them. Having a strictly subscribed set of regulations will make a huge difference, and that's what we've got with the Jaguars. We're lucky. Most of our equipment has to be from a road car. So the engine blocks, the engine cylinder heads have to be from a road car. The gearboxes, for the most part, have to be from a road car, but we can't run sequential gearboxes, which is where, you know, someone will go out and spend 10 grand on a sequential, and everyone else on the grid needs to spend 10 grand on a sequential to keep up. That's the way it goes with free regulations. So within our series, we've got fairly well controlled in that, yeah, most components are off the shelf from somewhere. You can climb the classes, and as I say, Class D, where the monsters lie, is a bit more free than most. But if you want to be like me, you want to run on a budget, any other class pretty much is doable with road car components.
So no slick tyres then, I'm guessing. It's just normal road, all-weather tyres.
Depends how many burnouts you've done. They soon end up slick. Yeah, we have to run treaded tyres. Toyo R888Rs are our control tyre, which are a sort of semi-slick compound.
And I'm guessing you pay a certain amount for a certain set of tyres. So like you say, like you pay, I don't know, £1,000 for 4 sets of tyres to last you a whole season, or is that like handed out when you turn up at the racetrack?
No, we have to pay for our own tyres. So that was something I was doing when I first started, was trying to make tyres last. And the thing with our control tyre, with the Toyo, is that it sort of works in the wet, but once it's been used a bit, it doesn't. And I had a fairly spectacular off at Donington on an old set that I was trying to last for a long time. And I soon learned that actually you just need to dig into your pocket every now and then and put yourself on some decent rubber.
All right. Yeah, thank you for the interview, Mike. I'm sure people at home will be tuning in to the All Elite Classic Jaguar racing, because from me personally, it's worth doing. And as you said, go down to your local track, support your local track. It's what we said last week as well. For a tenner, you get 9-10 hours of motor racing, and the variety is incredible. Obviously, subscribe our shows. We're on Audible, we're on Spotify. I think we've even got a TikTok now, so we're keeping up with the young people. And after this, we're going to dive into some endurance racing that happened in St. Petersburg, as in not Russia, America, St. Petersburg.
This is Motorsport Radio. Join the conversation. Contact the show on Twitter, on Facebook, and on our website, Motorsport Radio.